Introducing the Air Force Pro X8. It is 8 motors on here. It is an X8 setup in beta flight. It has an F7 flight controller on board. It also has dual 4-in-1 30 amp ESCs on board, a Runcam Nano 2, and it has 2.5 inch props, 4 prop guards, and it has pusher on the bottom, standard on top, and it is set up in beta flight as an X8. Pretty crazy. So let's go ahead and power up a 4S 1100 on here and get out for the flight test. So here we go, guys. This is kind of historic on the channel. Honestly, this is the first time I'm flying an X8 setup type of drone. I don't even know what to call it, copter or drone. Well, my first impression is that it feels way different than my standard 4-up setup X-frame quadcopter. So I'm so used to calling these things quadcopters, and now I'm flying an 8X, which is kind of interesting. So I am really at this point kind of just feeling it out. It says 1 watt up at the top there. You can say A1 and it says 1 watt. I don't think this thing's running 1 watt because there is some breakup right here coming back. With that high antenna, I really shouldn't be having a lot of breakup. I have a feeling that this is set to 25 milliwatt on the VTX. There's no way that's 1 watt. You wouldn't see any breakup with this antenna setup I have. So this is really going to be a cruising flight. I really didn't want to go try any steep tree dives at this point because I really didn't want to crash this thing or put it up in a tree. But there's a mild one, and that is where I wanted to test it to see if it would just do any kind of gentle freak out with a gentle dive. And you know, the good news is that it didn't. It also tracks really well around the field, and I really kept an eye on the left hand side of the screen. If you look to the very bottom there, it says 14.8 volts, and I'm looking at my timer on the right. That's from time of takeoff. I have 1 minute and 42 seconds right there. So I'm thinking like, well, I'm probably gonna get 2.5 minutes on a 4S 1100, and I'm thinking, you know, not so great, because I've already seen the other review on this Air Force One Pro, and I was thinking 2-minute flight time was gonna be my maximum flight time today, even maybe with the 1100 on there. I'm not carrying a GoPro today because, well, I don't think this is really suited for the extra weight of a GoPro. I know they put the extra power on this quad to carry a GoPro, but honestly folks, it's 2021 and we're all running D-case GoPros at this point in the FPV community. I know some of you guys still run GoPros, but most of us run GoPros on 6-inch, 5-inch, 7-inch frames, not necessarily 2.5-inch frames. I understand the concept that the Axis Flying group tried to do with this quad, but honestly, stick a D-case GoPro in there, you're going to get just as good footage, and it's only going to weigh 30 grams. So the point is kind of mute, you know what I mean? So at this point, I just wanted to show you the Runcam 2 footage and show you what the tune looks like on here. Because, hey, let's be honest, the tune's looking pretty good. I don't see any vibes in the tune, even way up high. That's actually really good. And I can't wait to freestyle it. But at this point in my flight test, I'm just enjoying the stability that this quad gives me, even in acro mode. If you wanted to use this as an acro trainer, you kind of could. The prop guards are pretty durable with the extra bit of foam on the outside. I did kind of scrape the front of the foam on that little concrete bounce, but the Runcam Nano 2 also does really well underneath canopy. There's not a lot of light shift adjustment, which I like a lot. Come out from the trees, and it adjusts really fast. Not like the old school FPV cameras that had really terrible light shift adjustment. You come out and you'd be basically blind for a second when you came out from underneath the trees. You guys in 2021 are super spoiled with these new cameras. The latency is much better, and the color shift adjustment, light brightness, darkness, contrast, all that stuff is so much better. In a way, some of the new cameras almost look like DJI cameras. Not quite, but this is an analog camera. If you want to go DJI, they have an HD version coming too. You can also do that. So far, this X8 is fun to fly. I keep wanting to call it a quadcopter, but it's not. It's an X8. So cool. And I gotta say, inside Betaflight, the setup in Betaflight looks ultra confusing. You've got top motor, bottom motor set up here. And the bottom motors, watch out, they are pusher motors. They're not like an inverted upside down prop. They do go on right side up, and they're pushing air out underneath the quad. And a traditional setup on the very top. So that's just set up there to confuse you. If you're a new guy and you're taking all these props and putting them all back on, it would be a Christmas miracle if you get all of these propellers back on there without having it flip over and having one of them on wrong when you go to do your first flight test. But very, very, very nice and fun and uneventful cruising flight. And I'm coming back with a happy flight time of about 5.5 minutes. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think I could get 5 minutes with a D-Case GoPro just cruising with this X8. That is really good news and makes me super happy. Let's do a little after flight report. Alright guys, just a little after flight report with this guy. I just flew the 4S GNB 1100 HV battery. Now this one charges up to 4.35 volts per cell, so I think you should get the HV batteries for this Air Force Pro. That got me, without the GoPro, 5.5 minutes. That's acceptable for the 2.5 inch category. So you got to remember, you're running twice the power system on here versus a regular quadcopter, which also means you have a really nice stable hover and a smooth flyer, but you also have twice the power when you need it or if you want it. So now that we've tried just kind of a cruising battery test, I'd like to try the same size battery, 4S 1100. This is my Eachine HV battery also that I've got good use out of. It hasn't puffed up yet on me, and we're gonna see how it handles a little bit of aerobatics, maybe a little bit of freestyle. I'm not gonna go super crazy, but I just want to kind of see if it'll loop without tumbling or having that flight controller freak out. We'll see how it does. Then we'll go back to the studio for my final thoughts on this one. Pretty cool so far. I have never flown one at this size with 8 motors. Miniature octo in a quad format. Pretty crazy. Here we go. Okay, now the fun begins. The freestyle flight test. Let's see what an X8 will do with 2.5 inch power setup on a 4S 1100. Same battery with a little more flippy dippy stuff going on this time. And I'm working on this flight controller to see if I can just get it to trip up, wash out, tumble, whatever you want to call it. I want to see if I can freak this flight controller out. And you know, the rates are kind of soft on here. So this is about as fast as I can get this thing to flip. This is like full stick flips that I'm working on. And that's as fast as it goes right there. So it's handling any of the flips and rolls that I throw at it. And it's not giving me any washout. I was expecting some washout here. I was expecting some flight controller tumble. So all of the flips and loops and rolls and everything checked out. Now for a straight up 60-foot dive, no problem, down to the parking lot. I didn't have tumble. I have flown other 3-inch Cinewhoops in this category, very similar with deeper ducts that couldn't handle any of this freestyle. Look at that. This is cool. We're gonna test out some more flips here. But I'm loving the yaw axis on this quad too. Look at all of the power of these motors close to the ground. This thing's almost like an RC car at that level. Just throwing all kinds of dust up. Look at that. It's like a little tornado down there. Isn't that cool? That is a lot of power coming out of the bottom of that quad. So you fly this over somebody's head, it's gonna blow all their hair in the air. Don't do that. Gonna go up for another dive. And it got a little bit of dust on the run cam too at this point, but that extra power that these other reviewers are talking about, it's there. So I was able to zoom right up to the top of that tree. I can go anywhere I want with this quad, and yeah, there we go. A little bit of a save right there with that extra power at the high end of the throttle. Helped me get out of that situation. I was almost ready to bottom out in that parking lot. No problem, just powered right out of it. And now I'm really starting to feel the flow. I think if you wanted to freestyle this, you could, but honestly, it's not really a freestyle type of drone. It's honestly more of a filming rig and something with a little extra power to carry a GoPro. But again, I think that we definitely should use decased GoPros on this X8. There's no reason in the world why you put a full-size GoPro with something like the decased GoPro 8 from Geprc that they released. You could get an Insta360 Beta FPV SMO 4K and stick on here. So why in the world would you run a full-size GoPro? Not needed. You get the same footage from a decased one. And right now, with my freestyle test, I'm down to 14.3 volt when I'm giving it some throttle, but I'm also at 3 minutes for a 4S 1100. So that's not bad. Over and under the power lines. Still, camera's a little bit dusty. Thinking about coming home at this point, but one more victory flip over the van and back around. And we're coming close to 3.5 minutes here for the freestyle flight test. Not bad. And I just kind of wanted to see if it would do some general orbit knife edge, and it will also knife edge. Pretty cool Air Force Pro X8. Not bad axis flying. I like it. Let's go back to the bench, guys. Let's talk about this on the bench. Give you a final heads up. All right, guys, welcome back from the flight test, the freestyle flight test, and the cruising flight test. Now, first off to start, I use my 4S 1100 because, well, I've seen the other review out there. My buddy Albert Kim only got around 2 minutes carrying a GoPro with a 4S 850. So, for the start of my review, I didn't even play around with the 850 milliamp battery. I just went straight for the 1100 to see what I could get. I was tempted to put something like a 4S 1300 and just do a converter down from an XT30 down to an XT60. I didn't do that. I figured that I could get a standard 2.5 inch flight time with a 4S 1300. This strap will accept it. Do it. Put it on there. It will fly with a 1300 on there. It does seem so much bigger. This is a 1500, but I mean, it will carry a 1300. It will probably even carry a 1500. I mean, think about it. You have 8 motors here with twice the power of the normal X-frame quad setup. We have an X8 here, so we have 8 motors to carry as something as heavy as a GoPro and an 1100 battery. I don't really think this quad is built for carrying a GoPro. I know that was the original intention of this quad, but honestly, forget a full-size GoPro. Forget it. Toss it to the side. Don't use it. Get a decased GoPro. That's what everyone is using nowadays. And if you do that, you're around 30 grams versus a full GoPro weight with an additional battery. You can run these decased GoPros now straight to the flight controller and power it from the drone's battery. So why would you want to, in 2021, mid 2021, run a full-size GoPro on something this small? It's insane. Forget it. Just use the decased GoPro. You're not gonna have that much difference of flight time if you put a little 30-gram camera on here recording 4K at 60 frames per second. That is what's current in 2021. So $295 will get you this guy, the X8 with 600 milliwatt VTX. It says on the Bango website. It said in my OSD that I was getting 1 watt. I don't think so. I think this thing was running on 25 milliwatt. I think that the on-screen display had to be wrong because it seems like I was getting some breakup here and there. And if I'm running 1 watt, honestly guys, we're not gonna have a whole lot of breakup. I have the SkyZone 030s still that I use as my daily driver goggles, and they do really, really well with the 8 dB patch antenna from Fox here on there. So 8 dB Foxier Echo patch antenna is great, along with my just a standard Lollipop 3 on there. It does great. So I think that we were running 25 milliwatt today, but I have to say that I'm pretty impressed. 4S 1100 got me, you know, right around 5.5 minutes. I mean, that's really not bad for a cruising flight. Cruising flight, total flight time 5.5 minutes, and I went down to a minimum battery of 13.5 volts on a 4S battery. So if you're flying freestyle, I was able to get 3 minutes and 38 seconds out of that, almost 4 minutes. So with some of my punch outs, if you're doing a little less throttle, I was really trying to do some high-end throttle stuff for you guys and do some power loops and just do some general wacky dives down some tall trees. And I was expecting this guy to freak out, the flight controller to wash out and tumble, and it never did. It just like kept doing its thing like a traditional quad would. And with this much prop guard on there, I figured that these guys were gonna give me big problems with tumble. I thought this thing was gonna tumble to the ground and I was gonna end up breaking one of these. I got a little scuff on the front from where I hit the pavement when I was flying it one time. So not bad. Well played, Axis. Axis flying, good job there. I also have to say, I kind of like the way that they have this frame set up. It is like a unibody sandwich frame design. It has 2 sets of ESCs on this baby as well. So you can see the main power cord coming off the back right here. You have 2 cords coming to a single XT30. Now I wouldn't want to solder this back up if this broke off, but it's kind of cool to see that running off 2 separate sets of ESCs, one up top, one down bottom. In the center here, it's hard to see, but you have your VTX up top. I'll just try to zoom in there. And on the website, it does say 600 milliwatt on the Banggood website. Maybe that's a typo, I don't know. But we also have the Crossfire Nano. You see this antenna post right here coming out on this side and on this side over here. Pretty cool. They already have that all zip tied in. And the VTX itself has an MMCX connector in here as well. See that little brass plug in right there? That's MMCX coming out to this extra long tail back here. I love that they used a really tall one. So this is great for flying way out there. And this is a top mount battery setup. I was able to get comfortably my GMB 4S on top. And I love that they gave us a larger size strap, because I'd really hate to try to run something like a 4S 850. 2 minutes of flight time, that's unacceptable. So I want something that's at least gonna fly for 4 or 5 minutes with the way the current state of quads are. We expect that 5 minutes to 10 minutes flight time now, because we're using a little lower KV motors in a lot of these quads lately, and we're not so concerned with big power. But the point of this is to have 8 motors on here to be able to carry a GoPro. And again, I don't think you need to. I think it's kind of, the point is kind of moot at this point in 2021. You know, if this quad came out, say 3 or 4 years ago, it would be relative to carry a GoPro, because back then we just didn't have D-case GoPros. For the $400 price point, also, they're gonna release an HD version. It is currently on the Banggood website. I think pre-orders are open for that. You can get it with the Vista built into here, and you can also pair it up with a TBS Crossfire Nano RX, which would be pretty freaking sweet. Now, the thing about it is, for me, I really didn't care if it had Crossfire on it, because I know I wasn't gonna fly it miles out with such a short flight time. So at 5 minutes, you know, 5.5 minutes on an 1100 cruising, how far are you gonna go? I mean, honestly, how far are you gonna go on 1100, right? Not very far. It's cool that they also have an F7 on here, the F7 flight controller, dead center of the quad. That's what we needed to be able to handle this type of power setup and all this extra sort of external pressure to the flight controller. When this thing is flying, it has a tremendous amount of external pressure, airflow pushing on that flight controller. So it's amazing to me that they have such a good tune on here that we didn't get external force washout, because that is what trips up a flight controller. A lot of these whoops, these 3-inch whoop categories, they can't freestyle, a lot of them, because the really super thick ducts that they have, the deep ducts. So all that external push on the flight control, that force. Just, you know, it's kind of like trying to do freestyle with a bunch of like an inner tube around your waist. It'd be like trying to do a flip on a trampoline with like a Michelin Man outfit. So if you could imagine that, or like a T-Rex outfit. I know some of you guys are pretty good at gymnastics, but if you can do it, post a link down in this video and let me see it. I'd love to see that. We also have 1404 4510 kV motors, and those are good for 4S. Don't try to run 6S on this baby. And the max power on those is 250 watt. Those are Axis Fly-In AF 144 motors, so they are actually Axis branded, which is cool. And I'm not sure who these guys are. Is this HDLRC? Is this iFlight coming out with another brand? Or is this a brand new company coming out? Anybody know? They'd be interesting to know. We also have GemFan. Seen these before. These are ducted style prop. They have sort of a stripped off, flipped off bull nose for any type of duct. And those are D63. They're 63 millimeter, and they're 1.5 2-bolt configuration shaft right there for these motors. Pretty standard. I've seen those before. But I think the overall weight, you know, it is over 250 grams as well. And I think if you want to get one of these and have some fun with it, and you fly my setup on here, I think that is going to be the ticket for this little Air Force Pro. I think if you try to fly anything smaller, you're just going to be frustrated with it. And I think it kind of, in a way, sets a bad precedence, like out for the FPV community. If you sometimes just test it with what the company tells you, you know, no offense to anybody else there that's reviewed this one, else out there, you know, when the company tells you to use a certain battery, a lot of times we just do it. And, you know, in this case, sometimes you have to not listen to what they're telling you and just try out what you have a feeling will work on a quad. You know, I feel like the 1550 is getting kind of big and kind of heavy, but that's about the weight of a GoPro. So test one of those out and see how long a flight time you get with it. If you're just cruising, that's kind of what this is. I wouldn't say this is a freestyle quad. It's just damn cool though. And the 4S 1100 for me, you know, 5.5 minutes flight time is pretty awesome. And if you get the HD version, man, that is super cool. So one other thing that I didn't mention was that this has 30 amp ESCs, so it is targeted for 4S. I do mean to mention that it is a burst current, max current of 35 amp, and those are again 20 by 20 dual 30 amp 4-in-1 ESCs. Kind of crazy, but I love it. I love it. I love it. And there's a lot of hype around this one on the initial release of it, so hopefully now the hype continues, because I think this is kind of a cool direction. I'd like to see maybe for future release of this a 6S version, and I would really like Axis to send me an HD version of this puppy, because this would be super fun to fly in HD, because I'd really send it out there and get some extreme altitude with it, and do some good tree dives with it in HD. You can really see where you're going with HD, but the Runcam Nano, it's acceptable. So everything held up on here. I didn't have any big crashes for a durability test, so I apologize about that, but I'm kind of happy that I didn't break it, because this is kind of a unicorn of sorts in my collection. I don't have an X8 anywhere in my collection, and this is my first one, so I'm very, very happy to have this one. And if I'm not flying this one might just go on the wall, because it is so darn cool. But thanks again for hanging out with me, guys, on the Camps channel and flying and testing new quads, new gear all the time. Some camping stuff coming up too, so drone camps, a little bit camping stuff, a little bit of drone stuff right here. Please subscribe, and be sure to make your comment down below for that Eachine Novice 4 that we're giving away at the end of July. Guys keep asking me when the drawing is. It's coming up at the end of this month, so it's not the end of the month yet, guys. Hang in there. Hang in with me. Subscribe, comment, and get entered in for that giveaway. All right, guys, I'm Justin Davis. I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Stay humble and be kind, guys. Bye-bye.